Hello, one and all. Welcome to another episode of MMA Vision Analysis. This one, I'm here to talk about what I think fight of the night, UFC 305 Perth, Australia. The one that took place in the lightweight division between Mathews Gamrot and Dan the Hangman Hooker. But before getting started, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click that notification to get all of this that is new from this channel. Your channel, the one and only MMA Vision Analysis. If you were to take a look at the stats of the fight, you will be confused in terms of the decision. Everything leaned towards Mathews Gamrot's side, at least in terms of the number. But most certainly, if you did watch the fight, the flashiness was on Dan the Hangman Hooker's side. His punches had more pop to him. Ultimately, that's why the judges reflected the decision that was on display. It was kind of interesting in terms of judging the night of UFC 305. If I'm not mistaken, one of the judges was relieved of his duties after the Tai Tuivasa fight. Gave all 3 rounds to Tai Tuivasa, and if you were to watch the fight, you would see that Jairzinho Rozenstruik was ahead the entirety of the time that fight. I do digress a bit. This is directly linked to this fight here, though, even though the referee was dismissed prior to this fight. But nonetheless, this was a very interesting decision. I do understand that the pop, just in terms of the shots, had more pop from Dan Hooker's side. But if you were to take a look at overall stats, you would see that Mathews Gamrot had more significant shots percentage-wise landed, more significant shots thrown, and in terms of the wrestling aspect of things, Mathews Gamrot was miles ahead of Dan the Hangman Hooker. I do understand when he did take Dan Hooker down, he was not successful in being able to keep Dan Hooker down. Maybe that's why the judges perhaps viewed it as a win for Dan Hooker to stuff the takedowns. Ultimately, he was able to stuff like 10 takedowns, and from I believe 15 total takedown attempts, Mathews Gamrot was able to have 5 successful takedowns, but not much time was spent on the ground. These were brief moments. The fight goes to the ground, and then Hooker was immediately able to get up. Maybe in terms of takedown defense, that was kind of looked at as a advantage for Dan Hooker, just because when Mathews Gamrot did take the fight to the ground, it was not on the ground for long. Dan Hooker was able to get up almost immediately. In all honesty, Mathews Gamrot's style is he's a very good wrestler, but Dan Hooker's just that good. He is that good, especially striking. In all honesty, still, with all that being said, it's just the decision kind of doesn't make sense, because if you were to look at the numbers, you would see that Mathews Gamrot was ahead on everything. But flashiness and in terms of pop-on shots, definitely on Dan Hooker's side. But ultimately, the decision was a bit shocking. Like I said, if you were to take everything into consideration, sometimes the fights are given just because a guy is able to take a couple, just because a guy is able to land a couple of takedowns. Mathews was able to land 5 takedowns from 15 takedown attempts. And he was ahead on every single stat in terms of the fight. Significant strikes landed, takedown attempts, and successful takedown attempts. It was all on Mathews' side. But as I said earlier, I'll say it again, perhaps the reason the judges gave that one to Dan Hooker is because he was the flashier fighter, and his shots did have more pop to him. Ultimately, he did seem like he was somewhat in control of the fight as the fight graduated. Mathews did seem as if he was fatigued. Also, Dan Hooker was excellent at stuffing the takedowns. Maybe this had a lot to do with the decision. But ultimately, if you were to look at the stats, you are going to realize that Mathews Gamrot was ahead on everything. If you made it this far, I appreciate you for sticking around. Please let me know what you think in the comments and like, subscribe for more.